What is going on, everyone? This is another style of YouTube video. I have done a couple of videos like this in the past, kind of talking about my own experience, but I'm now going to give a little bit of education from what I've learned, from what I promote with my clients, on how to run your first cycle and how to do it correctly, what you'll need, everything that kind of goes into it. If you have been training for a couple of years and you've finally decided that you want to, jump on PEDs, potentially do your first show, jump to the dark side, this video will be for you and how I would kind of run your first cycle. This is a very, very basic first cycle and something that I would recommend for majority of people when they're first starting out. It does change case by case, but this is kind of the best way I would go about it if I was to run my first cycle over again. So there we go. Just so we are all aware, this is for educational purposes only. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm kind of just telling you what I would do if I would have, to run my first cycle again and, kind of give you that big brother kind of advice when running your first cycle. So let's get into it. First of all, we're going to go through making sure you are actually ready to run a cycle. Are you aware of the pros and cons? Are you, it's more so like a little bit of a checklist to see if you are ready to jump on, or you're just kind of just wanting to do it for other reasons. So this is what I kind of believe that you should have under your belt to begin with, training consistently for at least 3 to 5 years. I think people who jump on too early, you can see that in a physique, and not having built that foundation is a massive detriment to your progress. Optimizing your natural nutrition and sleep. So what I mean by that is making sure that you kind of nail all of the other basics before you decide to jump on gear. That is something that I wish I did better when I first started. I definitely didn't have my nutrition nailed down as I should have, but you live and you learn. And again, another thing that I wish I did was getting my blood work done prior to jumping on gear. I didn't have a set of bloods done, and I really fucking wish that I did, just to see where my natural levels were at, and to kind of see if you do have any predisposed issues, such as liver issues, kidney issues, things like that, prior to jumping on gear. And understanding the risks and side effects, that is something that I definitely was quite aware of. Hence, I have fucking shaved my head. That is a big part of potentially jumping on PEDs. You are most likely going to lose your hair at some point, but that is highly genetically dependent. Some people can blast the absolute shit out of gear and have zero side effects, and some people can take 250 test and be riddled with every side effect under the sun. So that is something to consider. Another massive thing that a lot of people don't think about is having an AI or SERM on hand before you start your cycle. So AIs being like Arimidex, Aromasin, and Nolvadex is my preferred SERM of choice. An AI is used to manage your estrogen, especially when you are using test or other PEDs. It is just the easiest way to kind of mitigate any potential side effects that you will get from high estrogen. And then SERM, as I mentioned, Nolvadex. I'm a big fan of using Nolvadex as it is a estrogen receptor blocker, and it blocks the estrogen from hitting the receptor sites. So for example, if you are somebody who's prone to gynecomastia, like I was, using a SERM like Nolvadex, I'm a big fan of. Anytime you do get a little bit of flare up, you can throw that in and it will mitigate that for you. Regardless of how good your PED protocols are, sometimes this can just happen. Even when your bloods are in check, it can be a few other factors that are involved there as well. And the biggest thing being mentally prepared for the long-term commitment of using PEDs. More than likely, if you were jumping on PEDs, it is not just going to be a one cycle and done. So make sure you are committed to jumping on long term. Okay. Not ready if you are under 20 to 25. I did start prior to that, and I wish I had waited a little bit longer. You will see I don't even know how many people nowadays are jumping on prior to 20. It is ridiculous. You see it all over TikTok, Instagram, all of these guys that are fucking like nearly IFBB pros by the time they're 20, 21. Like, they've been on gear for fucking probably 4 to 5 years by that point. So yeah. Haven't at least tried to maximize your natural potential. I definitely didn't do that either. And I wish I definitely tried to wait a little bit longer. I had already been training by like 5 to 7 years at this point, naturally, prior to jumping on gear, but I definitely think you should be at least giving it a good fucking effort at natural training and nutrition first before jumping on. Or you were kind of just jumping on for vanity purposes rather than, competing purposes. I always wanted to compete, so that was kind of a no-brainer for me to jump on. Not having any blood work done. As I mentioned, you really should. Not having the ancillaries ready, and you're just kind of looking for a shortcut to look good. It is not going to do that without you putting in the hard work prior and, focusing on nutrition, your training, your sleep, your supplementation, everything else first. And unwilling to do a post-cycle or, not willing to do TRT for life because, as I mentioned, it is a long-term commitment and you might be somebody who is shut down after one cycle and you may need to jump. You might need to be on TRT forever. All right, let's get into the next bit. Test only. I am a big proponent of just using testosterone only as a first cycle. I do not think you really need anything else. Potentially you can add in other peptides, but I don't think any other additional anabolics are really necessary for the most part. And why do we do this? To isolate any variables of potential side effects that you could be getting when you are taking other anabolics. If you just take one anabolic and it being test only, that way any side effects you are getting is from test and that specific dosage that you are currently running. If you're starting to use things like Masteron, Tren, all that kind of stuff, on top of that, the side effects could be from any of those potential other PEDs. And test is best. Test is in every single freaking PED stack you will ever run. Make sure you know how your body reacts with test and, run that up to a decent dosage. You can do that in your first cycle too, but you just need to be willing to be aware of all of the side effects that will come with that. And again, it is the easiest to manage. It is very easy to manage test with an AI or potentially adding in something like MAST or EQ where it will manage your estrogen conversion. But again, on your first cycle, just using an AI is far easier and it is far easier to continue to kind of monitor that going forward. And you're going to get fucking insane results regardless just on test. You do not need Tren. You do not need all the other orals. You do not need all of that other stuff in a first cycle. If you can't gain a significant amount of strength and muscle on a test-only cycle for your first cycle, you need to fucking fix the other variables going on first. So that is why we are using test only. And then the ester of testosterone, something that a lot of people don't think about either. But again, this is slightly less important. I think majority of people are using Test E for the most part because it is just so widely available. It is very easy to keep stable blood levels, and there's really minimal sides, honestly, to be completely honest, if you are running it correctly. And as for your frequency of injections with testosterone, I personally am a big proponent of injecting as frequently as possible, whether that's 5 days a week, 7 days a week, however you want to do that, even if it isn't a longer ester like an anthate or cypionate, where you've got a 4.5 day to 5 day ester here on SIP. I would still be pinning it daily or near daily, minimum of 2 to 3 times per week, but I'm a much larger proponent of pushing that to daily. I just find far better results and far more stable blood levels by doing that. And then test prop, I don't even know why people still use test prop, to be completely honest. Even in a pre-contest setting, a lot of the time, you don't fucking need to do that. You can just use Test E and then pull it out a week or two prior to the show and you'll be completely fine. But regardless, this is your first cycle, you're probably not using it. Anyway, it really is not. There's no need for test prop. If anybody's telling you to use test prop, tell them get fucked. There's really no need to use it. Test SIP and Test E are the way to go, in my personal opinion. And Test E, I honestly haven't even used anything other than Test E because it is just, test is best. and just using a basic Test E, you're going to get the same shit. It's less likely to be faked, and it's very easy to get your hands on. So Test E is the way to go. And the dosing protocol for a first cycle, anywhere you can start from, I think 250 to 300 as the initial introduction of testosterone is ideal, as you will not be getting you shouldn't be getting crazy side effects from 250 to 300 mg of test. The only way you'll be getting crazy side effects from that is if your lifestyle factors outside of the basics of bodybuilding are quite shit. If you are eating poor quality food, you will aromatize more. If you're in bad shape, you will aromatize more. If you're drinking, doing all these other things, you will damage your body far more than using 250 or 300 mg of test. And then as you progress in the cycle, I think a maximum for a first cycle to like 500 to 600 milligrams max of test. I don't think you need to go any more than that. And the duration of the cycle, anywhere from 12 to 16 to even 20 weeks, I think is completely fine. That really just depends on how your blood work is looking. I don't really think there is any need to go longer than that. And then once you have done that, you can either go into a PCT or a cruise phase, which we'll cover as well. And something to also consider, more is not always better. Just taking 500 mg of test does not mean it is going to be twice as good as 250. All you're going to be doing at that point is increasing your side effects without slowly working your way up in dosages. I don't think there is any need to jump straight from 250 to 500. I would personally go from like 250 to 375 to maybe 450 to maybe 500. I don't think it is necessary to just whack straight 500 in, as a lot of people in the old days would suggest. Your pinning days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as a minimum, in my opinion, but consistency is key for stable levels, as I mentioned before. That's why I'm a big fan of daily injections. And then injection sites, the easiest ones, in my opinion, for a beginner: glutes, lats, delts, potentially quads if you want to mess around with that. But I've heard some horror stories about pinning your quads. I have personally never pinned my quads. I am a big proponent of lats, delts, rear delts, and chest. But make sure you are rotating sites. Do not be somebody who is just pinning their glutes every single fucking day. And using the appropriate needle gauges. So usually you will use a 23 gauge to draw the oil out of the vial, and then you'll be using a 25 to 27 to inject intramuscularly into the body. Ancillaries. So this is what I was talking about by having your AIs and Nolvadex and things like that on hand. So this is what I would highly suggest as a basic kind of on-hand thing that you should have when you are taking PEDs, or at least test as a base. Having Aromacin, Arimidex, Anastrozole, which is your AI. Exemestane is a suicide inhibitor of estrogen, so I'm not a huge fan of it, but some people do use it. I'm not a massive fan of it. And using P5P or B6 for prolactin management if needed. You shouldn't really need it, but it is definitely there in case you do. TUDCA for liver support. I'm a big fan of TUDCA. Increases bile flow in the body as well as kind of just overall liver support. 500 to 1,000 mg a day of that. I would personally run this on every single cycle, regardless of orals. I'm a big fan. And NAC is probably one of the better antioxidants you can use. It is great for just your overall health and your liver support as well. As mentioned, if you are going to be running a PCT, this is how I would kind of structure it. I would wait 4 to 5 weeks for your test to clear. Then I would begin your PCT treatment after that. And Nolvadex, I go 40, 40, 20, 20. And that is from 4 to 5 weeks, go 40, 40, 6 to 8 weeks, 20, 20, 20. And then Clomid, you can add that on if you really want to. But there is some potential downsides of running Clomid, potentially depression, things like that. I'm not a huge fan of it, but some people do recommend that when you are in a PCT. And if fertility is a major concern of yours while on cycle, you can do this when you do decide to come off or go down to TRT. But If you want to run HCG while you are on cycle, it'll help keep your balls bigger and preserve your testicular function. I just don't see a major use case for it in a lot of people while you are on cycle, to be completely honest. Enclomiphene is pretty much the better version of Clomid or Clomiphene. A lot of people will use this in conjunction with HCG as a natural way to kind of increase your testosterone rather than pinning gear, and making sure you do get blood work after your cycle. Very, very important. Whether you're doing this 4 weeks after your bloods, 4 weeks after your cycle, or you're doing this on cycle, getting blood work is mandatory in my opinion, and we will go over that now. Pre-cycle blood work, getting a full panel is fucking super important, but the main things you will be looking at is your total test, your estrogen, your LH and FSH, your complete blood count, and your liver markers, your kidney markers, your lipids. This is massive as well, especially on cycle. And if you are over 30, getting your prostate checked and your PSA checked is major as well. Hematocrit and hemoglobin as a baseline, I think, is very important to make sure where your levels are sitting. And then while you are on cycle, to see how the PEDs are working for you, this is kind of what I would be wanting to test. Your total and free test, so you can see where your levels are at on the dose that you are at. Your estrogen again, which will tell you what the ratio of the amount of test you're taking is converting to estrogen. So that's why I would highly recommend getting mid-cycle bloods. That way you can know if you need to add an AI in, as I've mentioned here. And again, your hematocrit or hemoglobin, just to see where it is trending. If it is continuously going up, some intervention may be needed, which could be potentially adding in fasted cardio, fish oils, things like that. Your liver enzymes, lipid panel, just the basic stuff there with your blood work just while you are on cycle. And then 4 weeks post-cycle, doesn't necessarily need to be post-PCT, because a lot of people are honestly not going to do PCT these days, are just going to continuously blast and cruise, which is completely fine, but make sure you are getting bloods done post-cycle. Alrighty, and then into the common sides and how to manage them. So a lot of the time people will experience high estrogen in a first cycle, and a lot of the time this will look like water retention, puffy nipples, mood swings, low libido, and the easiest fix for that is using a low dose AI like Aromasin or anastrozole, and only starting. Usually I would wait for bloods, but if you are not getting bloods done, wait till a problem arises. You do not want to jump on this proactively, because you don't actually know where your levels will be at. And then on the other side, crashed estrogen, and the signs of that will be dry joints, brain fog, low mood, low libido, and erectile dysfunction, which is something that a lot of people will experience while you are on PEDs, and at some point you probably will experience. I fucking have. I know a lot of the other guys have as well. It is just part of the game, unfortunately, and that is can be mitigated with a properly designed cycle. And the best way to fix that is stop using your AIs, or if this is because of a basically because this is your first cycle, stop using AIs. If you are using them, get rid of them. Your E2 will come up. But yeah, having crash estrogen, in my opinion, is far worse than high estrogen. So just do not overdo the AIs, otherwise you will crash your shit. And it is not very fun. Acne, obviously, the signs of that is just back, chest, face acne. A lot of the time that is driven by the hormones, androgens, as well as increased oil production, which will make your skin more oily, therefore producing more acne. Topical treatments is the easiest fix. Salicylic acid, zinc, keeping your gear clean. Obviously just buying high quality gear if possible. And if you end up getting cystic acne, or you have very, very bad acne, Accutane is the best way to resolve that. If you want to continue running this while on cycle, you can do a low dose of Accutane for a long period of time. But again, I would just be very cautious of doing that, and making sure that all of your levels in your blood work, especially your liver levels, are in check. That is something that is very, very important. And then obviously hair loss, as I mentioned before, is a very, very common side effect, and you are really just going to speed it up. If you have genetically predisposed male pattern baldness in your family, using PEDs is just going to ramp that up a lot fucking faster. Yeah, and using test isn't the worst offender for this. Using a lot of the time a DHT derivative or harsh orals, even really harsh fat burners, I think is probably one of the major reasons why people start to lose their hair, or at least getting that thinner look, is just from a depletion of quality nutrients in the body, which being on gear, you do deplete nutrients faster. So there you go. And the easiest thing you can do for this is using ketoconazole shampoo, finasteride, and minoxidil if desired. There is multiple other protocols that you can use for hair loss, which I have done in the past, and I've just decided to say fuck it and not follow through with those, because it's a lifetime fucking commitment if you're going to be on PEDs, to be completely honest. And then obviously testicular atrophy is going to happen if you are on cycle and staying on cycle. Even if you come down to TRT, you will have suppressed LH and FSH, which is your naturally producing and stimulating hormones, this is what is pretty much your balls being turned on or off. And the easiest fix for that, if you are on cycle, is to continue running HCG. But again, I don't know many people who really do. But once you jump off cycle, they will regain fullness. They will, if you are going to be able to recover naturally, your LH and FSH will come back online and your balls will thicken back up again. But no one's ever complained. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Elevated hematocrit, obviously. Blood becomes thicker, increased cardiovascular risk. This is something that is huge, and monitoring your blood pressure is even more important. And the easiest fix for this is just to continuously monitor your blood work. Donate blood if you need to, or reduce your dose in general. There is supplements that you can take that will help with this, but we can go into that in another video. Full cycle timeline, as I've mentioned, this is kind of the standard kind of thing that I would go through. Anywhere from 250 to 300 to start, and then ramping it up to 500 to 600 by the end. And again, anywhere from 16 to 20 weeks, I think, is suitable for a first cycle, especially as you are not pushing the dosages all that crazy. So I'm not massively hard on how long a cycle should be. It really just depends on blood work and how your body is reacting and how your body is feeling. But I am a big fan of running liver support while you are taking PEDs, regardless if it's just injections or orals. I am a big proponent of making sure that you have some kind of liver support in there, without a doubt. And then blood work post-cycle as a minimum. If you are going to do a PCT, getting your LH and FSH back online is priority number one. And as mentioned in the slide earlier, this PCT is going to be the way to go. But if you are going to be going to a cruise, all you want to do there is replicate your natural levels of testosterone, and a good cruise dose for a lot of people can be anywhere from 80 milligrams to 150 milligrams. And if you are somebody who is pushing size like myself, my cruise is honestly like 250 milligrams, which is really a beginner cycle for most people. But it's a cruise, not TRT for me. So it's a little bit different in that regard. It's not my first cycle. I've done many. Okay, and your lifestyle factors that need to be improved, or making sure that they are on point when you are on cycle. Obviously, your nutrition, training, sleep, hydration, alcohol consumption, and your mental health, something that I think is not spoken about enough when on gear. Anyway, your nutrition, gear will not compensate for a shit diet. It really will not. I wish I had my diet in check when I first started taking PEDs a lot better than I did. I would have made far more progress, had far less side effects, and would have made so much more progress. So take it from me, please get your nutrition on point before you decide to jump on gear. and make sure when you are on gear, it is on point. Otherwise, you will run into side effects. Train harder than you did naturally. You have the recovery advantage, so use it. Progressive overload on big movements, and don't waste your cycle on pump work. This is massive. I see a lot of fucking bros going into the gym, focusing on pump work, focusing on getting a pump and looking good for a fucking photo. Brother, like, yes, you might get some results, but focusing on progressive overload is how you will get long-term fucking gains and continuously improve year on year, cycle on cycle. So make sure that is your main priority. Your sleep, 7 to 9 hours is non-negotiable. As somebody who has struggled with sleep in the past, sleep is your number one best friend when it comes to PEDs. Sleep in itself is a fucking PED. I will say it. I'm a big fan. Obviously for the growth hormone release, cortisol management, and recovery. Pretty important right here. So make sure your sleep is on point and your hydration as well. Higher red blood cell production means you need more water. I think a minimum of 3 to 4 liters is a very, very low hanging fruit, and you should be hitting this even as a natural. So if you're not doing this on gear, you are really selling yourself short. And obviously if you're training in a very hot or humid environment and sweating a lot more, this probably needs to be doubled. So make sure that is being done. Alcohol consumption. Alcohol is hepatotoxic and wrecks your hormone levels. Even when you are on cycle, you're just going to be damaging your liver even fucking more. But yeah, minimize it heavily while you are taking PEDs. And if you are doing a PCT, get rid of it completely, because you are really making yourself struggle to get back online if you are going to be doing that. And then your mental health on gear, I think, is something that isn't spoken about enough, as I just mentioned before. So making sure that you are monitoring your mood, your libido, your energy. Make sure all of those things are a priority, and you are making note of that when you are on cycle compared to when you were natural. It is huge. Take it seriously, honestly. It is not a weakness whatsoever. It is physiology. Your body will be changing when you are in gear, and it's something that you need to be aware of. I cannot stress this enough, honestly. I know a lot of people that when they jump on gear, they think they're fucking Superman, but in reality, how you are as a person just gets heightened tenfold. So if you're a very anxious person, you're going to be a lot more anxious when you are taking PEDs. If you're an angry person, you're going to be even more angry when you are on PEDs. So make sure that is something that you are aware of and really do take into account. And the bottom line, run it right or don't run it at all. Make sure you have research before you start, not after. Have everything on hand before you start your pin. Do your blood work. There is no exceptions for this. PCT is optional, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are just going to be doing a cruise dose, TRT, and going from there. And in all honesty, you just need to respect the process and the compounds that you are using. This shit is not a game. It really is not. So I really cannot stress this enough. Do not just take PEDs for the sake of taking them. Do your research. This is a lifelong commitment, and it is really something that I think a lot more people should be cautious of if they are just deciding to do it just because their friends are doing it, just because their favorite influencer is doing it. That's not going to fucking get you anywhere, okay? So yeah, that is kind of my overview on how I would run a first cycle, things to look out for, things that you need, things that you really should be aware of. But yeah, if you've made it this far in the video, to be completely honest, if you're taking this dosage of gear, you're probably going to be fine. But it is very important to either work with a coach, have people that have knowledge in the field and can help you if you do run into any potential side effects. And again, please just run tests for your first cycle unless you are working with a coach that is experienced with other PEDs, because you're only going to be setting yourself up for a world of fucking hurt if that's the case. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. That is kind of my how to run your first cycle video. I'm not sure how this will be interpreted by a lot of people, but I hope it has helped somebody. And, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. If you want to DM me, please do. I'm more than happy to help as much as I can with any questions, any concerns, anything like that. So if you did enjoy it, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, drop them in the comments, drop them in my DMs. I'm always an open book and I'm happy to help. Alrighty, big dogs. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.